All right, let's talk USC Trojans. This is a team obviously heading into a massive matchup this weekend, but lost in the hustle and bustle. The USC Trojans' long-term trajectory is looking better and better. They're making massive moves. We'll get into all that reporting in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the USC Trojans, been a little bit of a up and down season, I think, to be totally fair. They got some big wins. I mean, that Michigan performance at home was just awesome. It was a great all-around team effort. Notre Dame game, it just didn't go well. Let's be totally honest. And, of course, we know what happened in Champaign, Illinois. But right now, the whole thing is in front of USC. Of course, they know if they win out and they put themselves in a good position to make the college football playoff, and they got a big matchup against Nebraska this weekend to continue building that momentum to put them in that position. But like all good programs do, and one of the things they did when they brought in Chad Bellin was to change the orientation of this program to be a constantly future-building program like Notre Dame has done, is all good programs have to be recruiting all the time and recruiting at a high level. And folks, USC continues to just cash in recruiting win after recruiting win after recruiting win. Let's get into the reporting right here. Then we'll get some interesting data on the other side. This is courtesy of SI.com. The USC Trojans hosted 3 key recruiting targets for the 2026 cycle on October 11th when they defeated Michigan 31-13 at the Coliseum. Northwest Mississippi Community College cornerback Jaquan Morris, Santa Margarita, California 3-star cornerback Jane Crowner, and Southwestern College California tight end Josiah Jefferson. Morris committed to USC that following Monday, and Crowder flipped his commitment from Cal to his hometown school later that same week. We reported on it at the time. Now, good news, the Trojans have gone 3 for 3 when Jefferson flipped his commitment from Utah, a good program, obviously, to USC on Monday, October 27th. That would be yesterday. By the time you guys are watching this, at the earliest, this video is going out the 28th of October. The 6'5", 230-pound Jefferson is the number 1 JUCO-ranked tight end and number 8 overall prospect, according to the 24/7 Sports JUCO rankings. Jefferson is also the younger brother of former NFL safety Tony Jefferson, who played for 5 teams across 11 seasons. So obviously a lot of recruiting news. We're talking big move after big move after big move, right? It's one of those things that is a sign of good long-term recruiting health, is if you can pull off consistent wins and consistent commitments, even after a loss, even after a down performance like we saw against the Fighting Irish. It's one thing when you beat Michigan and the following day you get a few commits. Hey, that's awesome. But you kind of expect that. But what happens after you lose? What happens after, oh man, they're not going to go 11-1 or something like that? Maybe they won't even make the playoff. How do you recruit then? That puts your coaches in a tough position. It really does, because it allows your recruiting opposition to negatively recruit against you. Like, you want to go to USC? You want to go 9-3, 8-4? Hey, come here and go to Oregon, making up a program. We were in the playoff last year, or come to Ohio State, or whatever it may be. It makes it a little harder to recruit. It really does. Negative recruiting is a real strategy. It's used all the time. I'm personally not a fan of it, but it's a dog-eat-dog world, right? If you can't pay a recruit $100,000, you want to say, listen, you want to go over there and lose, come here and win. It's just the way it's always been with recruiting. So even despite the loss, even despite some perceived loss of momentum, USC continues to stack the wins, especially this Jefferson commit, which is a huge deal. And we're starting to see this program really turn a corner here. In fact, let's pull up an interesting data. We got 2 graphs. This first one I think is probably the most interesting. This is the average recruit score over the past 3 seasons, looking at the 2024 class, the 2025 class, and the 2026 class. And you can see the average recruit score was basically 90 right on the dot in 2024. A little bit low, but basically right 90 again. The scale's pretty compressed on the y-axis, so it's pretty cramped just because a big-time program like USC, the range is not going to be as big. Like the recruit to lane will obviously be a lot lower, so we're kind of focusing like to like by narrowing the scale. But you can see here in 2026, the quality spiked 2 whole points, almost all the way up to 92, up to this point with 30-plus commits already. So we're seeing USC absolutely crush it in terms of recruiting quality. And that's one of the things you really look for, because there's a way, if you're trying to just fill out a big recruiting class, which Chad Ballin and Lincoln Riley have said, we're trying to get 35 guys, right? You can fill out the class, but if you water down the quality, it doesn't really meet the goals of trying to be a championship program. So you can see they're pulling in the big guns, they're pulling in the wins, and their quality is going up. And if you look at the overall recruit score, again, this is per 24/7 Sports. If I pull this up right here, you can see that big spike, just like the same thing. If I go back to the average recruit score, you see the big spike. As you would expect, the overall class also has that big spike. So they're doing a good job with quantity and quality. It speaks to what Bound is doing. It speaks to what Lincoln Riley is doing. But I think most importantly, it speaks to the staff's ability to not have to rely on a good game on Saturday to get some recruiting wins. Because one of the things as a program, if you have to rely on that, it's just not sustainable because you're going to have it off Saturday. It's the modern world of college football with the NILs and transfers and all of that. Even the lesser programs have good players. I mean, look at Illinois, for example. They're a great example of that. Their quarterback, Luke Altamar, was competing for a starting job at Ole Miss in the SEC, and next thing you know, he's a starter at Illinois, right? In days gone by, Illinois would not have not to pick on the Fighting Illini here, but they would not have access to a quarterback of that caliber right off the rip. They would have had to spend a lot of resources to recruit one and then develop him for a few years. Instead, they go through the transfer portal and get a good quarterback who just could crack a tough starting lineup in the SEC, and now he goes to Illinois, the Fighting Illini, and suddenly turns that whole program around, right? And teams can do that at every position, especially those mid-tier programs, the Illinois of the world, the schools like that, because you can use the transfer portal and say, hey, you back up at Ole Miss, you back up at Miami, whatever it may be. Hey, you want to be a backup there? You want to come here and start? And that's basically what they've done at programs like Illinois. And I'm not bashing them for it. It's a smart strategy. It just makes every game that much harder. It becomes much like the National Football League where there's so much parity, which means if you're relying on a winning streak to win in the recruiting game, ain't going to happen, right? Because you're going to lose. Every team's going to lose. Oregon lost. Right, Ohio State probably is going to lose eventually. I mean, we've seen the best teams in the country, throw out some duds. Right, we saw Ohio State last year lost a couple games. Right, so again, it's one of those things where no program can go unblemished, or it's much harder than it was in years past, just because there's so much parity in college football. And if you're able to sort of overcome those blemishes and still recruit well, it speaks to a really solid job in terms of your recruiting staff and your recruiting strategy. And that's exactly what USC has. Great job across the board. And I think the present I think is pretty good, but I think the future is getting brighter and brighter in Los Angeles. All right, we got a lot more to break down, but first, Trojans fans, in the comment section below, obviously a big matchup this weekend. Give us your prediction, final score. How do you think it's going to go down? Listen, this could go a couple different ways, right? I think this is not an easy game. I think this going on the road is a tough place, tough environment, traditional program. I think it's a great opportunity for USC, but it certainly is not a gimme. They've got a good quarterback, so let us know in the comment section below your thoughts, final score of this upcoming matchup. Want to hear from you guys. But without further ado, let's pull it up here. So this is per ESPN. Let's start with the matchup predictor, courtesy of ESPN Analytics. Right now, USC is given a 72.1% chance to beat Nebraska, who only has a 27.9% chance of winning the game, according again to ESPN Analytics. They basically look at their FPI, Football Performance Index, a bunch of other indicators, a bunch of other data, and they just throw it in a formula and say, hey, who has the best chance to win? And I think what they look at here is they say, listen, USC, tougher schedule, more impactful wins. They probably look at same opponents and say, listen, Nebraska did pretty good against, Michigan did pretty good against Nebraska. USC dominated Michigan. So there's a lot of that going into the factor here, but that's a pretty hefty favorite analytically, right? Normally in conference play between, two good programs, Nebraska, they're 6-2, right? They're playing good football. You would see that more 60-40, 55-45 to be a 72-28 edge essentially is a big sign that the analytics folks, when they dive into the numbers, they really like what USC's doing. And when you look at the odds per ESPN Bet Sportsbook, the Trojans have opened up as a 6.5-point favorite on the road. For anyone who's unfamiliar, usually the home team gets worth 2 to 3 points in their favor. So depending on home field advantage, and Nebraska's got a pretty good home field. So the sportsbooks are basically saying USC is 9 to 10 points better than Nebraska, which is a pretty hefty bet in terms of where these teams are, right? Because I know USC been playing some good football this year, but they haven't exactly, it's not like 2003, right? It's not that kind of USC Trojans team. So if you look at the situation right here, there's the analytics, the sports books, they all like USC. Now, it's not a guarantee of a victory, of course. You still got to go out and execute. But I think it does present a big opportunity for the Trojans. Because one thing with Matt Rule, the head coach of Nebraska this year, is that they've overcome a big hurdle in terms of winning close games. Because that's been an issue for Nebraska for about a decade. And they haven't been playing like great Nebraska has. But they found a way to win. They found a way to win against Cincinnati, Maryland, found a way to win last week, right, against Northwestern. So are they beating the brakes off of anybody? No. They're not dominant. They haven't looked dominant yet all year. And I doubt they will against USC. But they've been feisty. They've got a good special teams, good return game, good quarterback, good enough defense, some good backs. I don't think they're elite at anything. I really don't. But they're feisty, they're well coached, and they have enough playmakers and enough spots to make any game interesting. I think it's going to be a big test for USC. I really do. I think this is an opportunity for the Trojans. And listen, this is going to be a game that I think was all said and done between these two programs, right? Matt Rule, Nebraska, they're in year 3 of their rebuild. Lincoln Riley trying to turn things around in Southern Cal. This is a big program, measuring stick and crossroads for both of these schools, right? USC gets a big road win, carries momentum the rest of the season. Who knows what happened? But the same thing could be said of Nebraska. If they get a big victory at home, could it be their springboard for them to finish out the season strong? Maybe them even to sneak into the college football playoff, right? It's going to be a massive game. I think it's going to be close, brutally close down to the wire, and it's going to come down to execution and coaching. And can Lincoln Riley on the road go into Big Ten country and deliver a massive victory? I think that's going to be the big challenge for him. Listen, I think that's going to be one of the big things that's hurt Lincoln Riley up to this point, moving to the Big Ten, is going on the road and getting it done, right? Listen, beating Michigan in Los Angeles, huge, great job, 100% undeniable. But now can you go in Nebraska, in the middle of Big Ten country, a traditional, literally corn-fed program, right? Can you bring your West Coast Los Angeles, program out there and assert physical dominance? I mean, if they can, then I think they're emerging as a top-flight contender. And I really like USC's chances. I really do. I think Lincoln Riley has done a good job kind of retooling the players in this program. It's still going to take a couple more years for the recruits, obviously, to work their way through the system. The 2026 guys obviously will be even more years. They won't come into the fold until next year at the absolute earliest. But I do think the trend is definitely USC's favor right now. I like their players. I like their talent. I like Lincoln Riley as a coach, what he showed this season. Again, he's going to have a chance to bounce back coming off the bye. They're well rested. I like USC here, but I think it's going to be a dogfight coming down to the wire. I tell you what, a lot of people aren't giving this game a lot of credit in terms of publicity and attention, but I think it's one of the games of the week because it's going to tell us a direction between these two historic blue bloods, and I think it's definitely one to watch. I like USC, but this thing could go either way.